We're going to start off by giving you a bit of a history presentation, just so you've got a bit of background about how we've developed as a company. These are some very old photographs dating back to the 1960s. A lot of them are dead, which is including this guy here, our founder, John Bowers. But let's look at how the company got going. That was his mantra. He was out to make better products, and he felt that simply by doing that, you would sell them. And I think probably at that time it was true. These days, well, I've worked for several, well, 3 hi-fi companies, and the thing I learned very quickly about Bowers and Wilkins was making a better product is not enough. You've got to do that, but you also have to support your distribution, your dealers. You have to give them the right product at the right time, at the right price. You've got to give good service support. You've got to be able to talk to your customers to give them reassurance that they're using the product in the right way. All that has to come together. You have to be a good business. So that is essential, but it's not the only thing you have to achieve. We go back as a company to the 1960s. Now, Bowers and Wilkins actually goes back a lot further. It goes back to about 1945. That's a shop that's still there in Worthing Town, and there's a sort of running joke here that if they didn't have the words Bowers and Wilkins across the front of the shop, there probably wouldn't be a B&W store. But anyway, that's beside the point. That's more or less the same size as ever it was when it was selling these brands. I don't know if you've ever heard of Murphy televisions. They're a brand that's gone to the wall, but that was those days. Now, in 1965, John Bowers started making loudspeakers just for local customers at the back of the store in a garage. Very much hand to mouth. Eventually he set up a business completely separate financially from the store. So Mr. Wilkins stayed running the store. John Bowers found another partner and started up what was then B&W Electronics. And this was the first product that they made, the P1. He was buying in-drive units. There was an EMI elliptical base unit, a couple of Celestion tweeters, the old Celestion 1300, which I'm sure everybody knows. Later on there was a P2 and a P2H which replaced those tweeters with an Ionophane, actually, because it was made by Fane. That was an ionic horn-loaded tweeter. One of our forays into, I won't say a dead end, but slightly quirky speakers using technology that really has found a niche but hasn't been in the mainstream. We'll see that with another product later on. Later on he started making the DM, standing for domestic monitor. When CDs came along, John Bowers in his wisdom decided, oh, digital, wonderful, so we'll now call them digital monitors. There's nothing digital about the speakers themselves, and they were playing digitally recorded material. But that was a series of DMs, and that lives on today. The DM 600 series is still around today. This is the other niche product. I was working for the competition at the time. I was very jealous of this speaker. If you measure it, it's got a response like a dog's hind leg, but it really did sound very, very good indeed. Electrostatic mid-range and tweeter, which we made here, and again, I think it was an EMI base unit that was brought in. Very successful loudspeaker, very good sounding, but the electrostatic, again, a niche product, it used to have problems arcing across and burning out. So although it sounded very good, it was a bit like a racehorse, you know, and it goes for so long, and then it breaks down, needs servicing. So again, we tried it, we didn't find it was to our liking for the long term, so we've gone back to almost entirely moving coil loudspeakers. Let's move on to the 70s. There's Frank Zappa here picking his nose. Let's see what else was around in those. I couldn't think who this next group was until, anybody recognise this guy? It's Bill Gates. Yes, cool. It's the Microsoft. These sort of Farrah Fawcett, Charlie's Angels, the old days, yeah. And I don't know whatever happened to him, but he was. Anyway. So that was what was going on in those days. We moved into this place. The whole of Bowers and Wilkins was in this building. R&D, manufacturing, warehousing, the whole lot. You'll see when you visit the factory how we've moved on. But that was production already by then fairly cramped. This guy, Kenneth Grange, we were one of the first companies to employ consultant industrial designers to help design the look of our speakers, and Kenneth worked for us for many years. The last product he did was the Signature Diamond, so he's almost still with us. He's still working even though is he 80?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got to be 80 years old. Plenty of other products he's designed for Kenwood, the kitchen mixer, Kenwood Chef, that train, the interior of the latest London taxis, Kodak cameras, all sorts of things, Wilkinson's Hood. So he's designed for lots of people besides Bowers and Wilkins. He's currently got an exhibition on in London of his designs, so very prestigious guy. The first product he did for us was this little fellow here, the DM6, popularly known as the pregnant penguin. Another little toy, that was supposed to be a linear phase speaker. Well, it was a linear phase speaker, but I remember a reviewer at the time, and I can say this because I was working at CAF at the time, he said, yes, it is linear phase, but only if you lie on the floor. It used very, there was a bit of lobing, sort of the lobing went down. But what was really important was it was the first time we were using this material, Kevlar. So 1974, it's a long time we've been using this material, and to date we haven't found anything better for what it does. So why change something that works? That just shows the sort of measurements we were making at the time. This is where we've scanned the cone with a laser. This is a standard cone, a sort of homogeneous cone. It's a plastic cone, and that's Kevlar. So you can see, although they both break up, they break up in quite different ways. And although there's a lot of breakup going on in the Kevlar, it doesn't radiate a lot of the nasties out into the far field, which is why it sounds better. All very technical stuff, and Peter Fryer, who was our research director for many, many years, was a specialist in laser measurements, and that's been a backbone of a lot of the work that we've done throughout the years. These little things here, Queen's Awards, in those days you could only get it for export, and I have to tell you, if you win two, you've got to watch the cash flow, because you had to show an increase in exports, not just a level. You had to show an increase over about 5 years, and that can really drain your resources going for those sort of things. But we'll come to Queen's Awards later, because we won another two for different things. Oh, I should just go back. Just go back one. This was the original 801. Well, no, this actually wasn't the original one, because the original one wasn't even a reflex system. But it was important for us because it was our first association with some of the professional recording studios. At that time, we couldn't break into the rock and pop market because our speakers simply didn't play loud enough. But for classical music recording, that was the de facto monitoring speakers in a lot of studios, including the MI, Abbey Road, and Decca. So we've got a very strong partnership with Abbey Road even to this day. In fact, we did a product launch up there at Studio 2 the other week. So that's an association that's been very good for both parties, I think. Moving on to the 80s, who have we got here?
Madonna.
Yes.
Maserati.
Maserati, early Mac. Yep. So we're balanced, we have Apple and Microsoft here. Is that Tatum O'Neill?
Brooke Shoots.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah.
You've been thinking about the days, haven't you?
Yeah. Berlin Wall coming down all those years ago. This is the one that amuses me. This is an early prototype of the Nautilus, but it's this driver that amused me when I got here, because that's a KEF B139. But nobody who took the photograph knew about that. Here you see some of the drafting work that we're doing these days. So all our draftsmen these days have 3D CAD equipment. We're all into doing this, moving stuff around. Some prototypes that never saw the light of day. That was quite interesting. This was a glass speaker that we made prototypes of with a honeycomb inside. Found it nearly impossible to make, but it looked really nice. This is, I think, you'll see this when you go up to Stedding to the R&D department, the Klippel machine. You might have heard of Wolfgang Klippel and his laser measuring device. It's very good at measuring distortions and separating out distortions, different mechanisms, so you can see what's going on in the speaker. I'm going to kill that. Right. This I think is totally tasteless. This is John Bowes' grave, which bears some resemblance to a DM70, and I think that's a terribly bad taste, but that's just my personal opinion. When John Bowes died, of course, the company could very easily have lost its way. This was a man who was at the centre of everything that this company did. He was interested in exports, he was interested in the technical side, he was interested in how things went together, the production side. And when you lose someone who's as influential as that, who's founded the company, so much at the heart and drives everything the company does, when that person goes, I think we were very lucky that we survived in the way that we did. We could have been sold off to a large company and become a small cog in a very big wheel. We could have just declined. But the company was taken over by Robert Truns, who was then sort of sales and marketing director of Bowers and Wilkins, and he was left shares in the company by John Bowes, and he was in charge of the company when I joined in 1989, so that's 22 years that I've been here. Yes, this is a bit out of kilter. This shows a Nautilus 801, and that didn't come till quite later on. But I'm going to talk about this guy a bit here, because this fella and this device here and these two speakers go hand in hand. This is Morton Warren, who really took over from Kenneth Grange as being our chief industrial designer. Morton came out of college and worked here. The emphasis speaker, these are some of the other things he's done. The emphasis speaker you see here was his final year college project, and he managed to persuade Robert Truns to make this thing, which we did, and you know, for a niche product it sold very well. He was then taken on full time to design a new range of speakers. This is us getting into, I'm not supposed to use the word lifestyle because Bose have that trademark, but I'm going to use it anyway. But that's really where that Solid product began. The idea at the time was to sell Solid as a separate brand and market it, distribute it rather differently. But of course people started advertising it as the B&W Solid, so it eventually, those products came back into the main brand. But you'll see that sort of ilk today with M1s, mini theatres, with LM1s and that sort of product. Let's move on to the 1990s. Where are they now, eh?
Hey!
Yeah,
Brittany! Ugliest car in the world.
Everybody wants to design a chair. That's Kate Moss, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. So. Now where's that today?
Yeah.
Yes. I'll send you some sterling cheap.
Yeah.
You know. Now when I joined the company, I was actually designing speakers. One of the last projects I worked on was this one. So you can see I haven't been designing speakers for a long while. This was our first foray into home theatre. We made a totally passive THX approved system, which one of the projects I worked on. But this one was rather more important. The Nautilus, which was still making today after about 18 years, more or less unchanged, and we still make 1 or 2 pairs a month.
Yeah, approximately.
Which is about what it's been doing right the way through its life. Was a project given to one guy by John Bowers. It was given to Lawrence Dickey, who now works for both Turbo Sound and Vivid Audio. And you can see the connection with Vivid, you sort of see the family resemblance. He was told to go away, investigate everything there is to know about loudspeakers, and just design what you want. It was almost an open book project, with no boundaries, no constraints, no nothing. And this is what he came up with. The shape of it was actually designed by his girlfriend. It wasn't any of our industrial designers that came up with that. Now, although it's a product that is never mainstream, it's extremely difficult to put together. It was never engineered for mass production. Nevertheless, there are elements of that design which continue today. You'll see tubes at the back of virtually every tweeter that we make, for example. We still use some of the metal cones and domes throughout various other products. For the mid-range, we've adapted the tube principle into a spheroid tube that you'll see on the 800 and 802. So there's lots of work that was put into that product that really has benefited us in other products that we've made since. So it's been extremely influential. I'll skip Flowport. Now this was interesting because, as I mentioned before, with the likes of Abbey Road and Decker, we never got into the pop market. But the guys at Abbey Road were getting a bit fed up having to swap speakers around. If the pop guys came in, they would put some, I don't know, East Lakes or JBLs or something in. And then they'd wheel our 801s in for classical music. And they were getting a bit fed up with this, that they wanted a speaker that would do everything. And we sort of saw the writing on the wall well in time and came up with this beast. And I remember them, the Abbey Road guys coming down, some of the engineers coming down with recordings that they'd just made. And I remember one of them sitting down there and he'd listened to this CD that he just made. And he sort of looked around in despair and said, if I'd have had these monitors, I wouldn't have let that edit go. You could hear an edit on these that he couldn't hear on his normal monitoring speakers. So Abbey Road had these speakers for about a year. And thank God they did, because they blew up left, right and centre. They just couldn't stand the pace of life, and we had to make a lot of mechanical changes to the design before we put it on the market. So it's actually an improved version of the prototype that actually got sold. Things like, to stop tweeters blowing up, we started using the metal tube as a heat sink, just to drain the heat away, which we weren't doing originally. Little things like that. It was mainly to do with trying to make the thing run cooler so it could take more and more power. So that was a good proving ground, which goes to show that what I was saying earlier, that both parties have benefited from the association that we've had over many years. 600 series, our remaining DM series, still going today. This is series 3, I think. Series 4 is now in production. So you can see elements of various things. So originally 600 series didn't have Kevlar, that's got trickled down. Tube-loaded tweeters trickle down from Nautilus. So we put new technology into our most expensive speaker generally, and then when we get the production sorted out and we're more efficient at making these things, then you begin to see them in the less expensive products. I don't think you're going to see a diamond tweeter in 600 series any time soon, however. We're into the 2000s. Here's, well, he's back in the fold these days. Can't work out who that is.
Nope.
That's probably
The Mars
I don't know
Explorer.
what happened to him either. He's doing the lecture tours now, raking in the money, isn't he? Our lovely Tony Blair. Another studio where we've had close ties, Skywalker Sound, in Marin County, where my ex-boss now works. We opened our new factory, the one you're going to visit shortly, in 2002, which gives us a lot more space. It's a lot more airy, much more pleasant working environment than this place ever was. In years gone by, we used to buy all our wood cabinets in from various manufacturers, mostly in Denmark, where there's a great tradition of working with wood. And in 2003, we actually took over one of our bigger suppliers, Ludvigson's in Hagebeck, which is a tiny place. I mean, I think they're virtually the only, they were virtually the only employer there. If I click on that, you'll see some of the techniques and machinery that they were using, but you will see it all again when you visit the factory, because it's all been brought over here. We've brought all the expertise and the machinery into the UK. We'll keep closer control over it. So you'll see machines like this forming carcasses for 800 series, cutting out matrix, all computer controlled, all very accurate. And if you look up in the ceiling, you'll see here they're monitoring humidity and temperature. And if you look up in the ceiling when you're going around the woodworking department, you'll see devices there pushing out moisture into the atmosphere, water vapour, just so that the wood doesn't crack, it doesn't get too dry when it's been formed. Okay, let's move on. This is another Queen's Award, this time for enterprise and the section is innovation, and we got this for Nautilus tubes. We've just been awarded another one this year for the development of diamond domes in association with Element 6, who are the company that actually form them. 6 being the atomic number of carbon, in case you're interested. I'll skip that one because that's really a derivative of Element 6. But this one, this was one of my favourite products that we've ever made. Marco will discuss this later on because I think that's one of your questions. The PV1, the original PV1, was a development of this great drive. This original one was 2 15-inch drivers. I mean, it's enormous, great thing. Totally impractical, but sounded amazing. But we took the idea and packaged it into the PV1, which is a lot smaller. It's round because of good mechanical engineering, but it happens to make quite a pretty product. So it looks good. It's got a good story behind it. It is sound mechanical and electrical engineering, and it sounds good. So what more could you want? Well, the more we can make it digital, which is what we've done recently. But that was a very striking product, a very important product for us, and spawned other products off the back of it. I have to admit that I was the person who said you could comfortably pass that through the hoop of a basketball. It's much bigger than a basketball, of course, but you can just about get it through the hoop. That's, you could tell I'd moved to the marketing department by then. Diamond domes. I think there's a little film of those being made. So you won't see these actually being made in the factory, but you'll see them being used. They're made under very specialist conditions. There's a plasma that makes what wants to be graphite into carbon. So it's high temperature, a little bit of pressure, not as much as you used to need. These are like little Petri dishes. They have 2 thin skins of plastic film, a bit like cooking film, cling film, which they transport the domes from the factory to us. They were originally designed for transporting very delicate watch parts from the mountains of Switzerland down to the watch factories in the lowlands. I have to admit that what you see, the nice shiny front, is not diamond. Industrial design is a horrible grey colour, and to make it look rather pretty we put a very thin layer of platinum on the front. Secret of the trade. Stephen is going to demonstrate CT800 to you, which is installed mainly behind the walls. You'll see a couple of the speakers out there. So I'm not going to say too much about that, but this is us beginning to take, or not beginning, but taking home theatre very seriously indeed. Are you going to show them the rack of amplifiers?
I normally finish off with that.
There's a racks and racks of amplifiers driving all this stuff behind it. This is serious money, thank God for rich people. It sounds absolutely amazing. I mean, if you've got the money to spend, you know, what better to spend it on than enjoy life a bit.
A bit?
A bit, well, a lot. We've been diversifying in recent years. We have this project with Jaguar where you can get Bowers and Wilkins sound in the top XF, the XJ, and the sports car, which number I forget, but XKR, the XKR. So you'll find it in that, and we're working hard in that area. New media, of course, has been extremely important. First with the Zeppelin, now with Zeppelin Air, Zeppelin Mini, MM1s, Panorama. The category goes on, and it's becoming increasingly important to us. That's not to say that we are shying away from what we call our core products, the mainstream, because it's the same team that works on everything, and it's the expertise and the knowledge that you gain by working on core products that you can bring to premium new media products. I don't think, before this beast came along, people were buying Bose sound docks at 250 quid or whatever. Nobody thought that people would spend that amount of money on premium sound for iPods. We proved that it could be done, that it should be done, and now you see lots of other people coming to the market. That's another iconic product. And the products that have interested me over the years, now I'll wait till we have an interview, but generally the ones where you have more constraints and you're trying to satisfy particular particular constraints in the way the product is going to be used and where it's going to be used in order to produce a better sound for the customer. We introduced diamond tweeters into 800 series, but we were a bit afraid about the price increase. At retail, a diamond dome adds about $1,000, €1,000-ish to the retail price. It's a lot of money. And when you're talking about something like an 803 or an 805, that was a huge proportion of the total retail price. So we were a little bit afraid that people would not accept that sort of price rise. So it went into the larger, more expensive products. With the 800 series diamond, we were listening to people who said, no, sorry, we want it in an 805, we want it in an 804. So that was what Chris was about. One of my colleagues, John Dibb, was out in Japan for their importers show in Tokyo. And they did something, I think they took their life in their hand, but they demonstrated a pair of 805S's. And then the guy took off the tweeters and put on some diamond tweeters and almost A-B'd the thing. And I thought, you shouldn't do that sort of thing. But he did. And the audience, I don't know if any of you have been to this show, but the audience are very audiophile. And I got it immediately. They got it immediately. I remember the first time we ever put diamond tweeters into a prototype and listened to them in a complete system. And normally the engineers are, after about 10 seconds of listening, say, oh, did you hear this, did you hear that, blah, 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 blah. There was absolute silence. And then one turned to the other, and this was silly grin came over his face. Saying, we've got something here. And the Japanese people could hear this immediately in that demonstration, and I think it's proven that you're just getting that bit closer to natural sound. Trying to get to a live performance without actually turning up. That's my mantra. So let's... Oh, no, I don't know. I should hit it there. So into the future, and I think that's Lady Gaga gazing at us to the top. Now we've got Zeppelin Air, so we're into developing that area. So we're into Wi-Fi, we're into iPhone apps to try and set the thing up, and all the rigmarole that comes with that. Of course, the thing that we're having to learn as a company is that this market moves very, very quickly, much quicker than with core products. So it takes a lot of work, especially if you want to make a better product. But that's what we're about. It doesn't matter what the sector is, whether it's headphones, whether it's new media, iPods, whether it's traditional hi-fi, whether it's entry level, whether it's very expensive stuff. Our aim is to make it sound better. And when I walk into a hi-fi store, it's very difficult these days to hear bad sound. When I started in 1969, you could hear bad sound. It was all around. Now it's very difficult to hear bad sound, but the difference that I hear is that I begin to believe, when you switch our speakers, that the performer's there playing for you. And I think that's the crux of the matter. And it's something that's very difficult to get over to people these days, because people don't buy that anymore. They've got to be taught that all over again. People who are buying iPods and things, they're into functionality. So we've got a whole new learning course to go through with these people and teach them and expose them to what good sound can be, no matter what the source, no matter what the application, no matter where you want to listen to your sound. Okay, that's all I've got to go. I'm going to leave you.